But let me tell you, I'm Barbara Green, the president of Think Productive North America. I'm really, really glad you could join this webinar. I'm actually quite excited about it because email is such a huge part of our day, right? It infuses everything that we do. And it can be really sucky. And I love the title of it, right? How to make your email life suck less. And we really, really want to do that. We want to make you feel happier, less stressed, and keen to go back and do things at work the next day, right? That's what Think Productive is all about. I want to make sure that you feel free to comment and in the chat, add your own thoughts. I'll include those in our conversation because I want this to be a dialogue. And also, though, if you've got specific questions, if you could pop them into the Q&A, because you know with chat, I mean, as it goes on, things are lost, so I won't be able to see it. And I want to make sure that I don't lose any of the questions. So let's kick off. First question, what is the problem with email, right? I've been reading what people have been saying, and I've got a blessing and a curse, right? Email hijacks our day, overwhelmed, busy. And there's some passionate words in there. There's some people are feeling very frustrated by it, right? Blessing and a curse. And the thing is, email wasn't always that way. Do you remember? Email used to be very exciting. You know, you get a ping and be like, ooh, I got an email. And you're excited to go and read it. I mean, remember that movie, You've Got Mail, that one with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan? Because email was new, and there was this new way to communicate and reach out to people. Didn't have to phone them all the time. But that's not the way it is anymore, right? Again, back to this blessing and a curse. You see an email and it's like, oh, is it good news or bad news? Is it more work or is it a good thing? And I get a lot of clients, that is their number one thing. They're calling me about email. Their teams are stressed because of email. And not surprisingly, our two most popular workshops are getting your inbox to zero and supercharge your team comms. And the reason why is that they focus on email volume and email management, really looking at the tips and how do we fix the things around that, right? And that's what we're going to address today. So I'm going to be taking some of those tips from those workshops. I'm going to be sharing it with you. Sarah has raised a hand. Sarah, if you can put it in the chat, that would be great. If there's a question you've got, Sarah, just pop in the chat for me. Okay. So I'm going to move on. I'm assuming that all is well with Sarah. Oopsie, sorry. So we talked about some of these things that you talked about. So, and many people have said to us in the past, it's too many, it's never ending, it's distracting. It's our default tool. And I think that's part of the problem, right? Email has become the default. It's the only one that we use. It's the only one we think about. So before we get onto the solutions, I want to dive a little bit further into the details about this and about the stats around email. Because if we understand this a little bit more and understand maybe our behaviors, we can learn how to address those. We're going to look at that first. And the first thing I want to talk about is this study that was done back in 2019, but I think it's still relevant now, that on average, office workers received at least 120 emails and sent 40, right? So that's what the average was in 2019. Does that sound right to you? Does that sound, that's what I sent. Could you put your numbers in the chat? How many do you feel on average you receive and send each day? Wow, so I'm thinking that's 200 receive and 80 send. Okay, so basically, if you're saying it's like double, right? Wowzers. And Val says, yeah, the same. So she agrees, whoa, it's fine by now. During my busy, less time, other times a year, right? So yeah, send is probably higher, okay. Good, 150 to 60, yep. 200 to 80. Yeah. So it's in the right margins. Ooh, Marv, those are nice numbers. It's in the right margins of what this said from 2019, but some have a lot higher. I mean, like some are doubled, right? And what tools are you using to communicate with your colleagues? I mean, outside of email and phone, what's the other stuff you got going on in your office? Unless that's all you got. And I'd be really interested to know if that's all you got. You're just on the old, we use email, we use phone, right? Teams, oh, Teams is huge. Teams and Skype, yeah. Zoom, the dreaded Teams. Yeah, Val, I hear you. We use Slack, that's a big thing, Slack and WhatsApp. Yeah, Teams and WebEx. Teams is a big one, isn't it? Look at that, Teams. Lots of Teams. It's really taken over the market, hasn't it? Nobody has an in-house system? Because those are always fun, right? Somebody built something in-house, mainly emailed, try Teams and Slack. But so this is Leah saying, try Teams and Slack, but we haven't been able to get either to stick. That's key, isn't it? You know, that's like such a good point, because maybe that's why our emails, as it shows here on the slide, our emails are still, no matter what other tools we have, emails are still the major one we go for. Therefore, it's the one that's the constant interruption, the distraction. It's the one that we need to always address, because we can't get off of it. We can't get people to go on and use those other tools. That's interesting. You know, why not? What's the behavioral issues that's going on there that they're just not switching up? Maybe because it's just too easy. We know email, right? We've been using it for so long now. Yeah, too busy to learn something new. Tammy, you just, you know, really, you just hit it right there on the head. We know it, we hate it, but we know it, right? It's as they say, the devil you know. And that's the problem with it though, right? Look at that. Email is not going to go away. It is the thing that we know how to do, so we're going to keep using it. And that send and receive is just going to grow and grow and grow, right? Right there, it shows the stat for 2023. This was the expectation back when they did this in 2019. I bet you it's actually closer to that number already, right? We don't even have to wait 2 more years. And the stat that I find more worrying is the one below it. That, and this was in 2019 when they did this stat, that 40% of our day, our 8-hour day, assuming an 8-hour day, is spent on email. And that 40%, that actually means just over 3 hours a day we're spending on email, right? So I want to do a little poll with you on that, because this is 2019 numbers. I'm going to find out from you if that's the same. So if you should be able to see a poll right now, let me know if you're spending that. Is it less than 3? Is it the same? Is it the 40%? Is it more, 4 to 5? Or is it way more? You're 5 hours. Wow. Well, it's jumping all around. I'll share with you in a second. We've got a few more who haven't answered. You can take a second. If it's that you can't see it, just let me know in the chat if you can't see the polls, because maybe you're on a phone. And then I'll know that we're all done. A couple more. So we've got nine so far. Out of 12. Okay, well, I'm gonna close it there so we can all see it. And it's interesting. Okay. 44%, I hope everybody can see that. 44% are more than that stat was from 2019, which is about 4 or 5 hours a day people feel that they're doing emailing. Okay, they're doing work that is emailing. You know, that's responding to emails, sending emails, emailing. And then we've got 11% that are at either end, right? We've got 3 hours a day at one end, or less than 3 hours, fantastic, and over 5 hours at the other end. So more really in that above. And I'm not surprised. To be honest, I'm really not surprised, because of COVID, we're not in the office anymore. And if we are kind of back in the office, we're not all back in the office. And then what that does is mean we don't have the opportunity anymore for those impromptu conversations that we used to have. Remember those, just stopping in a hall or popping by somebody's desk and then just ask them those quick things that you need to ask them? We don't have that opportunity. So we're relying on email now. We're not even picking up the phone really. We're just emailing people everything. So those numbers are going to go up. And they're going to keep going up, and it's going to keep being noisy and distracting and everything we said, overwhelmed and busy, unless we do something about it. We need to change our habits around it and our behaviors. And that's what I'm hoping, that you're going to get some tips and habits to change those habits today. So in order to do that, I've got another question for you. And that is another poll. How often do you check your email? Okay, so not often, really, about once an hour. Frequently, 10 times a day. I have to say the constantly one just went bang, right up, boom. That's going to be a number there. That was quick responses. We're going to give it 2 more seconds and we're going to close the poll. And then done. And then share results. There we go. So there's a result. Constantly, it's always on, is the number one. 60% of this group. That's not a bad number. So we've got, not often, about once an hour. And then we've got 30% in the frequently, 10 times a day, approximately. So that's not a bad number. I like that. We're in a good place. Because normally when we have this conversation with our clients, this is what it looks like. 86%. That's a huge number. So 60%, you guys aren't doing too bad. There's some people in there who are thinking about their email and using it less, not checking it as often, and therefore it's being less of a distraction. But normally, most people, it's around 82, 85, 86%. It's always on. And the thing is, personally, I think this number, that the fact that it's constantly on, whether it's 60% or 86%, I think it's because of default behavior. It's like we just talked about. Email is a tool we go to all the time. And we have this habit of always checking it all the time because we see that's where our work comes in, right? We no longer have those in and out trays that we used to have in the old days. It's our email. So we get in this habit of checking for it, constantly going and looking. And maybe it's what we feel that we must do so that we're not missing anything. Some of my ninja colleagues, like some of you guys here, have very strict rules about how often they check their email. Like it's, only 3 times a day or even once a day, in the morning or in the evening. That's it. And most of them is actually in the evening because they use that as the way to say, okay, what do I need to think about for tomorrow? What do I need to maybe change on my priorities because of the emails that came in today? And I will deal with them tomorrow. At Think Productive, we encourage people to change that default thinking, that constant on thinking, and think of email not as something that always has to be on, but something that is deliberately on, right? It's something we go to and we use it. And then it's deliberately off because we're going to go and do some different work, even if it's at work, at our desk kind of work, writing a report, but we're not in our inbox, we're in another app like Word or something. And the reason why that is so important is that, anybody who's been to any of our workshops know anything about Think Productive. We're all about the need to guard our very precious and limited focus and attention. Yes, the slide also talks about time because we have limited time in the day. But the fact of the matter is we can't control time. We can't get more of it. We can't stop it. But what we can control is our focus and attention. So if we're constantly checking our email, then how much of that limited attention and focus are we wasting when we allow ourselves to be distracted by email? And the truth of it is, it's actually 23 minutes. Every time we distract ourselves by checking our email and we've been doing something else, it takes on average 23 minutes to get back into the headspace you were before you got distracted. And that 23 minutes isn't the time for the interruption, right? It takes 1 second to go and look at my phone. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about now I've looked at my phone and I've got to rethink and think about, okay, where was I in my chat? What was I doing? So 23 is the average. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, depends on how much and how in depth you were doing that work. So if you're wanting to really make a difference and stop that, then you need to stop always looking at your phone, right? And the funny thing is, it's worth noting that as much as we say our interruptions, all of these 23 minutes that come, oh, it's our colleagues, it's our spouses now that we're home, or our kids or our pets. The truth of it is, it's us, right? We're the cause of half of those interruptions. We're the ones that are distracting ourselves. So in order to change our habits, we need to own up to our role in creating the issue. Sorry, did I say it's 23 minutes? Sorry, it's 23 minutes, not seconds. 23 seconds would be quick. But 23 minutes is a big deal. So, because if you're working and you have like badly timed interruptions in your day, half of them caused by yourself, that's, you know, over an hour lost just from having to try and get back into the work. One of the things to note about this, because I find this very interesting. I'm one of those people, I don't know about you guys, it's hard to get back into the work again. What they say you should do is, if there's something that's going to interrupt you and you know it, like my daughter comes home from school from a certain time, I know it's coming, so I prepare for it. I always think, okay, where am I? What do I need to do next? I jot it down. So when that interruption comes, I can easily come back into the work. But yeah, 23 minutes. So what can we do? So as I said, I'm going to share some tips and some techniques that we use in our workshops. Not all of them work for everybody, and there is no one single bullet. So I want you to think about all the little things that you can do, because there are little things. When it comes to productivity and well-being, it's not a wholesale change. It's just making those incremental changes that go to the big result. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is just turn off the notifications, right? It's the simplest, quickest, easiest thing that you can do to be more productive. Turn off notifications, quiet all the noise. Because as human beings, we are designed to respond to those pings and those pops, right? It's part of our nature. And technology is designed to take advantage of that. I mean, they hire psychologists when they're building these apps and the software to find ways to make it grab our attention. Because to them, your attention is their currency. So, you know, we all notice when we get a new app, all of these notifications are on by default. There's like 3 different ways to tell you about something. So I think we should just flip it around, right? And turn everything off, and then be mindful and turn on only the things that we want, okay? Take ownership for your own currency, or your attention currency. Turning notifications off is the way to get this tool to actually start working for you, okay? Maybe do some notification culling, and then be mindful about everything else that's going on, not just your email, because that adds to the noise. In I Think Productive, we talk a lot about psychology before technology. And one of the characteristics we talk about that is weapon savvy. And the reason for that is that we need to be savvy about the tools that we're using, right? We need to make sure that we're using them most effectively. So we can't blame email if we're not taking control of the tool, turning off the notifications we don't need, turning off the noises that we don't need, so we're not distracting ourselves. We also have to think about, are there functionality in it that we should be using that we just maybe don't know about? Like, who's been on an Outlook course recently? Anyone? No, thanks, Val. How many people do? I don't remember anyone that I know of been on an Outlook course. I mean, I haven't been on one since I learned how to use Outlook. right? So the thing is that, so you may not know the shortcuts that are there now. Well done, Tammy. That's the thing you should be doing if you can find the time, is going and finding out, what can I do to be more productive? So one of the things that we do in our course, Getting Your Inbox to Zero, is we help people by giving them a PDF with some tips and techniques on making their Outlook be more effective. So what are all the productivity tools in there? I was going to share that with you, but I see I cannot do it in webinar. So if you're interested, just say yes, and I will email it to you afterwards. And it's a one pager that gives you some ideas. You may know some of them, you may not. So just as something that can give you that little boost to your productivity. And I'll share that with you. And please, yes, everybody says yes, please share it with your colleagues, but maybe not email it to them. So we talked about how turning notifications off is a huge step in reclaiming your attention currency. But what about turning email off, right? Because it's always on, we're always going to be distracted by it. And studies have shown that by having, for example, your phone visible, it's there. So even though I've got the notifications off, it's on silent, the fact that it's there, I know it's there, and I know that emails could be landing in it. And so that could cause a little distress because I'm thinking, what am I missing because I'm doing something else? And because I'm doing this, I'm not going to go check it. But if I'm doing something else that's on my own, I may go and check it. So best to get it out of sight, out of mind. The thing about email is that we don't want it to be, like we're that new parent with a young child, that every time it makes a noise that we're leaping up. So just because somebody sends you an email, it doesn't mean you need to respond straight away. At least I hope not. I hope that's not the environment that you're working in, because we need to think about it differently. We need to set aside time for when we purposely deal with emails, and other times when we just focus on getting our work done outside of email, because we need to remind ourselves our inbox is not our to-do list, right? And a simple way to achieve this is just to go dark. Turn off your send receive, put your phone on to airplane mode, and then get heads down, get work done. We're going to come on to it later, but the only way you can do that is to manage expectations of others, but really of yourself, right? You have to be able to turn that stuff off and then not worry. That FOMO, what fear of missing out. And sometimes it's not fear that you're going to miss something good. You're missing something bad. What if something urgent comes in that I got to respond to? We need to get beyond that if we're going to stop being so attached to checking our email all the time. And the reason that, we talked about the number of emails sent and received each day is that we have control. We have influence. I don't know if many people have heard about this, but sending an email is like throwing a boomerang, right? For every 5 you send, 3 come back. That's a 60% rate of return. So by limiting just one of the next 5 emails you plan to send will result in 12% fewer emails back in your inbox. It's not that hard. So just think about taking one person off a distribution list, and I'm sure you'll get volunteers for that, and stop doing one reply all. In fact, just stop doing reply all, or stop sending anything that's low priority. Does it really need to be an email? Can you just post it somewhere else? I spoke with somebody not that long ago. She had a very large team, and they were just sending her everything. And she said to them, look, guys, if you want me to see something, then you got to stop sending me everything. Right? It's that whole wood for the trees kind of idea. So the impact of sending her an email was totally being lost, right? The intention was, I really need you to see this. But the impact was, it's too noisy, I can't see it because I'm seeing everything else as well. So maybe we need to ask ourselves, is email the best medium? And if we are going to email, well, then how do we use it in the best way to get the impact that we want? I don't know if anybody has seen this, This is about keeping the message short, right? Because in business, news agents, they say, don't bury the lead. Well, that's important. That's what this is about. So if we want to make impact, then make sure your emails are short and sharp, and the important stuff is front and center. It's not lost in everything that you're saying. So this is actually a marketing technique. Not surprising, because it's very important in marketing to grab and keep your attention. So if you keep your emails short, then you're going to get people reading them and knowing what you're trying to ask of them. And really, this is what it looks like. That is 90 words. Because most readers just skim, right? They're not taking in all the details. If it's long and full of stuff, they're not going to see everything. So like the example, the woman I was talking to you about for their team, if they send less emails, but they send really long ones, it's going to be the same thing. She's not going to see what she wants them to see. So focus on being those short, sharp emails so your points aren't missed. In our Supercharge Your Team comms, one of the things we do talk about is being mindful about our emails, right? What are we seeking? What do we need? Why are we emailing? So in order to do that, you have to make sure they're action-oriented and clear. Now, there's just a couple of takeaways I just want to share with you. These are not new ideas, but I think we fall out of the habit of them. So if we just, look at them and go, oh, okay, I haven't tried that. Try a couple of these and see if it makes a difference in reducing that email boomerang. Because the clearer our message is going out, the less back and forth, that ping pong that you're going to get. So this one is what we just talked about keeping them short. But I like this 5-sentence rule. And the reason is you may not be able to write an email in 5 sentences. But if you're thinking about that, if it's not in the back of your mind, you go, okay, I'm going to use only 5 sentences, then you're being mindful and you're going to be more concise than if you just blah onto the page. And then the next one is pretty straightforward. Single issue, single topic, or single question. Don't try to jam everything into one email. It will get lost. Use bullets, headings, fonts. It looks nicer. You can find things. And font change, I don't mean Comic Sans. I'm really talking about using bold and those techniques. Best use of the subject line. Thank God Gmail and Outlook now tell you if you're going to send something. It saves me all the time. If you're going to send it without a subject line filled in, so you don't get those emails. But if you don't put in there what it's about clearly, right? It's going to be the meeting minutes from our sales meeting on blah. Then somebody gets an email and it just says meeting. And you can imagine their inbox is full. They're not going to find that email. And they're certainly not going to dig for it. So if you wanted something from them, it's going to get lost. You're not going to get the response that you want back. You're not going to get the action that you wanted because you haven't told them that it's in there waiting for them. And then this one, use hyperlinks where you can rather than add attachments. It's just easier. I hate downloading stuff. And if you're going to use attachments, tell people why and what it is. Again, same reason. Do I need to download this attachment? Do I already have it? So if you tell people what it is and then tell them why you're sending it to them, it's for review, you want comments back on the 21st, that kind of thing. It's very helpful. If you help the people you're sending the email to, you will help yourself by having less sent back to you. So here's just an example. Bullets, nice subject, very open, lot of white space, as opposed to this one. And this is the same content, just in a better format. Next one I just want to talk about is the dreaded CC. I'm just going to touch on it quickly. We all know about it. Basically, it says there, please stop, because we don't like it. What we suggest in Think Productive is to consider it not the carbon copy of old. I mean, honestly, that's pre-computers. But really, to think about it as a courtesy copy. So if you're putting somebody on the CC, then think about why. Why are they there? And let them know why in your email, right? Say, Bob, for information only, so he knows he doesn't have to do anything with it. Or Sally and James, please share with your team. So if there's no reason and you can't think of why, and you don't want to list in the email why they're on there, then they shouldn't be on the email at all. So that's a good thing to share, maybe back with your team. Let's stop CCing. And so on exactly that point, we've been talking about what you can do personally, and you can do a lot of things to stop the emails, that email boomerang. But if you want the biggest change, you've got to address this as a cultural thing in your organization. Okay, you have to address why we're defaulting to email, and why is there this expectation that I have to respond constantly. So one of the things that we work on and we find very impactful is creating a comms manifesto, because it enables that conversation to be had. The image there is the one that we have in Think Productive. We use it, and it's something that we use and we build with our clients. And we talked about already that we all have several different channels of communication, and we've also had the conversation there that people aren't using the other ones. Well, maybe we need to have those discussions about what channels we use for what. So if we say email is not used for just sharing information, we use Teams, we use Slack, then maybe it will cut down on how much you're using that email for those other things that it doesn't need to be used for. And we need to agree those rules of engagement, right? And then write it down, because otherwise we're not going to behave in that consistent manner. You actually need something to point to and say, remember that comms manifesto? And have it somewhere. A lot of companies, when we used to do it in-house, they would have it printed and put up so people can remember it and see how they're supposed to behave. So it really is there to help understand how the tools you're using are going to support your work and your communication, right? And then that helps those tools to stop being things that are going to disrupt you and distract you from your work. So I encourage you to have these conversations with your team. And then some things to consider when you do, right? There's some on the bullets there, but I think the key one is, what channels are we going to use for what kind of communication? So email is not the only, and it should not be the default. And what's the expected response time? That to me is critical, right? So that people know how often they need to be checking their email or these other tools. Because if you don't have those expected response time, then it's just a race to the bottom. Everybody's going to expect that everything needs to be done instantly. And it also removes the weight of our own expectation, right? Because it's not set. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have an expectation that people are going to respond to me instantly. But I worry that other people think that I need to respond to them instantly. So I always get something and I feel, oh, I better get back to them quickly. And you need to have that conversation with your team members to say, well, what do we expect? Are we all on the same page here? And that will cut out a lot of the stress about wondering when you're not checking your email, that you're okay to get your head down because you don't have to respond quickly, or you don't have to respond in the time that you think you do. And here's what we use in our Slack in Think Productive to let people know when we're not going to be immediately available, right? It's all about managing those expectations. So if you're going to go dark, you're going to go work offline, you don't have to fear that you're going to miss something, because everybody else knows you're going to be dark and offline. They're not going to be trying to reach out to you. But the key part is, as my colleague Jess has there, is saying to people, okay, I'm going to be away for this long, but this is how you get a hold of me if it's urgent. Okay, that's critical. You have to have the back door in case something is actually on fire. And you're not heads down, and you're not going to miss it, because next time you're going to worry about being heads down because you missed something big. So make sure you're having those conversations and you're agreeing how that's going to work. Does anybody have anything? What about in your emails, right? In your email signatures, does anybody have anything that they put something like that? Like our ninjas put a lot of, I batch process my emails, for example, so I don't check them often. It's like we tell people that it's every few hours we check it, or we check it only once a day. Because that's another way to set expectations, sometimes externally to the organization as well. I mean, one of my favorite ones, I don't know if you must have all seen it. It's this one about carbon footprint, right? About wanting to reduce carbon footprint. Oh, Eva, it doesn't help. And I hear you, Eva, and maybe it doesn't help because we haven't agreed those expectations. I think sometimes, especially these, unless we agree it with everybody, they're just not going to do it, right? Fortunately, we've created that culture in Think Productive. But the one I think I see a lot of, and I think this has helped, is that people say, I'm being respectful of the environment, I'm going to reduce my carbon footprint because I'm not going to reply when it's not necessary. Because it used to be, I don't know why, it got to this point where you get an email and everybody felt, if it was just even for information or somebody was sharing something, you had to go back and thank them or let them know you received it. It was just and you felt if you didn't do it, they weren't going to know. So I love this email signature, because what it's saying is, I'm going to help the environment, but I'm also going to help my own inbox and your inbox, because I'm not going to be sending that. And please don't expect me to just respond if I don't need to. If I'm not being asked to respond, I won't. So I like that one. It's all about the environment and my inbox. And this is the benefit. I just really want to touch on this with you. There is a case study out there about the impact of making these behavioral changes in an organization, in a team and in an organization. As you can see on there, the leadership team implemented a comms manifesto, right? A team of 7. And they reduced their email volume by 53%. I mean, that's huge. And then when the wider staff joined in, that reduction went again another 10%. So over 10,000 people hours were saved each year. And the thing is, they only did 3 things, right? It was not forwarding emails, limiting the number of recipients on emails, so perhaps bye-bye to CC, and also choosing and saying what their other forms of communications were going to be for what things that they needed to do. And the benefits, 2 years later, they reviewed it, and the benefits were sustained. So they were still seeing those benefits. People hadn't fallen back. We talked about this earlier. Well, we tried Slack, we tried this. And I think it's really about putting this manifesto in place, not just bringing the tools in, but having the conversation that we all agree it, we all buy into it. And that's when we're going to see the change and the sustained benefit from it. So really, because the key message is send less, receive less. So it is positive. So it is possible to make a positive impact on all that noise by committing to these kind of changes. So I'm just reading Tammy saying it's definitely needed to be implemented from the top down. Yep. And I don't find that top prioritize this type of improvement, even though they certainly benefit. I absolutely agree, Tammy. Absolutely agree. And we have worked, like I said, in organizations on this. We've worked with teams. We've definitely started with teams because of the reasons you just mentioned. We can't get the attention sometimes at the top. It really takes those forward-thinking organizations to want to do this. So, sometimes we just say, okay, we're going to make a team work better. And it does work. And I find that what happens is that this one team works better, and this team over here, they go, well, we want better. We see the results of it and we want it. And that's how it sometimes is a grassroots thing that spreads. If we could get it top down, spreads faster, but you can get it bottom up, but you got to get that buy-in on all those members of the team. But this is why it's important, and maybe this is the conversation you need to be having internally. We need the opportunity to switch off. We talk about the fact that we feel overwhelmed, that email is making us stressed out. So we need to rethink these tools and how we're using them. And the only way that we can do that is have the ability to turn it off, right? We need to allow ourselves the ability and the opportunity to switch it off, put it away. Put our phones away. In our household, all our phones go in the kitchen in the drawer. The ringer's on. So if it's urgent, somebody will ring, and they don't. It doesn't ring, right? But you need to give yourself the permission to not check your email, but just to relax, to switch it off. So we're coming near the end. Kind of had a quickly run through there because we're supposed to end at 1:45. But I just want to take a moment here, and I want you to jot down all the things we talked about today. What behaviors are you going to commit to? Is there anything here that you want to go, okay, I'm going to really try this? And then the other side of that, because it's just as important, thinking about what are you going to stop doing? See, maybe it's decluttering your phone and getting rid of all those other apps that aren't helping you, but are just adding to the noise. So you're not even changing the email, but you're just reducing all the other noise. So that's a lot less stressful for you. So what are the things, the behaviors we're going to start? What are the things that we're going to stop doing or get rid of that are not helping us and where we know they're not helping us? Okay, so we will realize benefits for doing these things ourselves, but I'm going to also put it back to you. How are you going to take some of this stuff back to your team? Go after those big gains from changing the culture, even at the team level, right? Have the conversations, maybe even develop, like I said, a comms manifesto. And then even if you only address the one thing, such as expected response times, or for other people, it could be what tool is for what. Those are my two favorites, what tools for what and the response times. Yes. So improvement within my team, so we're all agreeing on the same comms process. Exactly, Tanny. And then Eva saying, I see this helping with colleagues, but I don't respond to clients quickly. It creates more emails and calls until they get responded. Yes, and sometimes, Eva, that's true. That's just the way, the nature of our particular work. Like when I get something from a client, I have to respond quickly. I know that. But it's all that other noise if we can get down to. Okay, if we can cull all the other stuff that we don't have to respond to, everything's not the same. And I think right now, emails are seen as everything. Everything has to be the same. Everything we respond to the same sense of urgency, right? Like a fire alarm going off. We need to change that thinking. So we talked about a couple of things. I just want to remind you of them. The supercharge your team comms, that's what we do. We work with teams and we build those manifestos. You can really start that dialogue and do that stuff internally on your own. But if you want to call me and talk to me about any of that stuff, please give me a call. I can give you some ideas to help you be more successful in doing that. And then this second one here is about managing your email better. So if you've got thousands and tens of thousands of emails, you may want to look at this type of course. It used to be just in-house. We just started doing it publicly. So there's links there, and we're also giving a discount code for those that want to attend that session at the end of this month. So I'm just gonna, there we go. So we're really wrapping up here because like I said, I had a promise to end at 1:45. We're just a little late because we started a little late. But before we go, I just want to do two things. I've put the link into the evaluation. I really appreciate your feedback. I won't be offended. But I'd love to hear what you thought so that I can take that on board and think about how to make things different in future. And again, I've put my details in there. Please, reach out to me, contact me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what's working, what's not. I share a lot of tips on my LinkedIn presence. So I'd love to hear from you, and we can continue having that conversation.